All right, check the mic. We're live. It is week 13 in the NFL. Our weekly instant reaction here, Sam. Mustache free. Look at you all clean shaven now that November's over. Welcome
Yeah,
back.
not just mustache free, but all facial hair free. It's not. I don't like it. It's not good.
It's a different look for you. We'll see what happens next, but got to talk about the wild week 13. As always, tomorrow we'll have the full breakdown game by game, including the Thanksgiving games, the Black Friday game. But for today, Sam, where do we start? Let's go backwards. The Bucs just get the win in overtime against the Panthers. Crazy game. It looked like we were going to be talking about Bryce Young's game-winning drive. They needed a touchdown. He gets the touchdown, but it's Baker Mayfield getting a game-tying a field goal drive, and then the Bucs with the win in overtime after an unfortunate Chuba Hubbard fumble because he was good down the stretch for the Panthers.
Yeah, really good. He had a couple of key third downs that really didn't look like he had a shot on either one of them. He made a kind of extra lunge and got the first down. It's another game where we're talking about Bryce Young having another really good game and not getting rewarded for it. Like he had his career game, I think, against Kansas City, and they got robbed right at the death. And then here we go again. He actually does. He has the signature drive. He gets the time. He gets the drive. He scores the touchdown. And then Baker Mayfield is able to answer for the field goal to get them into overtime, fumble the ball away. Like, unlucky for Bryce Young, but we are seeing it's continuing. Like, this resurgence is real. He is playing his best football. He seems to only be getting better. Like, I think we're reaching kind of genuinely encouraging points, not just, hey, that was good for a guy that was terrible.
Yeah, I mean, I really think the Panthers. We talked about them maybe reconsidering, their options for next year to Bryce Young. I think we're there. I think Bryce Young has shown. Listen, I mean, there's still more football to be played here, right? But I think he's shown enough in the last 4 weeks that this wasn't just, hey, he's better against the low expectations. Like he's legit. He's doing legitimate NFL things. He's at least. I think if you're the Panthers, you're at least as optimistic as other teams that have their year one, year two quarterback that at least say, hey, that's going to be our guy next year. I really think the Panthers are pivoting from, looking at a starting quarterback in the draft to, who are the best pass rushers? Do we have another weapon here for Bryce Young? So I think that's where they are. We'll talk more about that again tomorrow. Huge. I mean, it's a huge turn of events in the NFC South now. The Bucs are 6-6 and tied with the Falcons because the Falcons lost to the Los Angeles Chargers. Chargers defense is good, man. I mean, they've given up the fewest points in the NFL this year. They win at 17-13, but this was an awful game from Kirk Cousins from a decision-making standpoint. Red zone turnovers, a game-ending interception, just really, really bad from Atlanta coming off their bye.
Yeah, like the Chargers defense is good, but man, Kirk Cousins just had a disaster of a game. And I think like because we know that he's working with physical limitations, coming off that Achilles and his arm isn't what it used to be because presumably in part because of that injury. But like anytime Cousins has a bad game, it's going to look like he's done, right? It's like if you add bad decisions on top of physical limitations, well, now you're just a terrible quarterback. And I think we've seen so far already this year, he's not terrible. Like he can play at a really high level still, but dude, when he has a bad game like this, it just looks horrendous, and he really doesn't give them any chance of winning. I mean, he was awful in this game, and honestly, it was a miracle that the game was as close as it was, given his turnovers.
Yeah, and if you told me, look, like we've been trashing Atlanta's pass rush this entire season. They sacked Justin Herbert 5 times. Really,
Yeah.
they held that offense to 10 points. It was a pick 6 by Kirk Cousins and a red zone interception that ended up being the difference there. So it did seem like Atlanta figured some things out as far as defensively during the bye week, but offensively came out, I put a lot on the quarterback in this game. So Chargers get the win. So the Falcons are sitting here at 6-6, tied with the Bucs. They've got the tiebreakers, but Bucs have the easiest schedule in the NFL, or at least in the NFC. So it's a race again in the NFC South. Let's go NFC North. Pittsburgh Steelers bounce back from the Thursday night loss 44-38 over the Bengals. Steelers now 9-3. Cincinnati, is this the last must-win game for Cincinnati to, put a nail in the coffin of their playoff hopes? They're 4-8 now.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of been the case for a while, but this was the game, and they've had a few of these. This was the game that showed why it's not going to get back on track, right? Because even with Joe Burrow playing as well as he did, even with the offense putting up that volume of points, over 30 points for the offense and then a defensive score as well, it didn't matter because the defense can't stop Pittsburgh, right? That's the problem is if you run into a half decent team and Pittsburgh's offense, it's not the best offense in the world. It's not, an elite top tier offense, but even Pittsburgh's offense was able to put a ton of points, a ton of yards on the board. So until the Bengals sort out the defense, they were never likely to be able to execute that crazy, season comeback that they've done in previous years because they're just not capable of stopping people. Like they need a better defense in order to limit any kind of offense to a winnable margin. But it was a huge game for Pittsburgh because, okay, they get this one. They overcome a dangerous Cincinnati team. And then, of course, later on, Baltimore drops the game to Philadelphia. So, a top of the NFL clash there. So Pittsburgh gets a ton of yardage, they get a win, and Baltimore drops one as well. So they get to really cement themselves at the top of that division.
As someone in the chat mentioned, I mean, let's credit Pittsburgh here. They had a defensive touchdown in there, but their offense was unstoppable. So bad Cincinnati defense, but Russell Wilson and the Steelers over 500 yards of offense. They ran the ball effectively. They sealed the deal with Justin Fields, keeper, but Russ throws for 414 yards on just 38 pass attempts, 3 touchdowns, and Cincinnati had a defensive score of their own. They got the Cam Taylor-Britt pick 6 early on. But after that,
which was ridiculous, by the way, an absurd no call. He tackled him to the ground with the back of his helmet, and the officials are just like, "Yeah, that seems fair to me."
I kept waiting for the flag. I kept waiting, like, when are they going to call this? Like, this is actually going to stand? Wow, that's crazy. But Pittsburgh did not look back. I mean, they were unstoppable offensively, and I keep coming back to they have a good defense. Sure, they gave it up a little bit today against a really good Cincinnati offense, but Pittsburgh's the ceiling of their offense is sky high with Russell Wilson, and he was throwing the ball really well in this one against Cincinnati. So I thought that was huge. How about Minnesota's game? 23-22 over the Arizona Cardinals. They were down 2 scores for much of the second half, into the second half. But Sam Darnold leads the game-winning drive, touchdown pass to Aaron Jones in the flat. Impressive again from Minnesota. And look, I'll say this. We just saw Kirk Cousins kind of, struggle trying to make his fourth quarter comeback. But when he was with Minnesota, he was doing that all the time. Kevin O'Connell's got a knack for leading some of these fourth quarter comebacks. And, got to credit Sam Darnold for executing it.
Yeah, I mean, this was the opposite of a lot of Vikings games this year where they jumped out to the big lead and then kind of let it slip away in the second half and eventually had to rescue the game. This time, it was a really close game. Nobody could score. The Vikings kept turning the ball over, and then they got themselves in a hole. Arizona put some scores on the board, and suddenly they are trying to chase this game, and they did it. It was an impressive job by them late in the game to come back, and the other thing is we had a great example of the Arizona. They had the decision, right? Do you kick the field goal, go up by 6, or do you go for 4th and goal at the 5, try and put a touchdown on the board and really basically, completely ice the game? Greg Olsen was on commentary. He did a really good job of talking everybody through it. The Cardinals end up kicking the field goal, and it was the perfect case study for the argument that you don't do that, right? Because it makes Minnesota go for every 4th down. They convert 4th and 7 on that drive. They end up getting the touchdown that they need to get. It was like the perfect case study of the argument for going for the 4th and 5 instead of the extra field goal.
Let's talk Jets every week. Let's talk Seahawks. Okay. Seahawks get the win, 26-21. They're 7-5. Seattle, they remain in first in the NFC West, and a little bit of separation now with Arizona. But the Jets, man, they're up 14-0 in this game, Sam. They're up 14-0. They're up 21-7. Offense dies again in the second half. We have Leonard Williams with a 91-yard pick 6, apparently the longest pick 6 for a 300-plus pounder in NFL history. Has a couple sacks in there as well. And so Seahawks 7-5. Jets coming off the bye. Doesn't matter. 3-9 for Aaron Rodgers' Jets.
They're up 21-7, and Aaron Rodgers misses a touchdown to a wide open Garrett Wilson in the end zone. He ran a double move. He had like 5+ yards of separation in the end zone, and Aaron Rodgers just overthrew him. And on the very next play, he throws the pick six. So what should have been 28-7 and running away with this ends up swinging completely in the opposite direction. 14-point swing essentially on back-to-back plays. And from that point, the Jets kind of stalled, and you could feel they've lost. They don't have belief, right? So anything that's about to shake their confidence, immediately it crumbles. Like when they were working, it was all going well. There's a play where Rodgers is out there throwing a block and an end around, like leading by example, even if it's a slightly foolish example, but still, like, they were feeling good at that point, but it's so fragile that like the second one thing goes wrong, the whole thing just crumbled down around them. They missed the touchdown that would have put them up 28, and then the pick six. And from that moment on, it's like the Jets no longer believed that they were going to win that game.
Jalen would rather go back to Zach Wilson. Well, Zach Wilson had a higher winning percentage than Aaron Rodgers, so you could kind of understand it. Man, Leonard Williams.
There's always Tyrod.
There is always Tyrod. I haven't really defended Aaron Rodgers, but I've defended his play a lot this year. But I've tried to blame him for the totality of things, and I still think you can do that. Again, like the Garrett Wilson example is a good one. It's all one-on-ones. And there was a lot of just misses in there. Rodgers makes a good throw. Devontae Adams doesn't come down with it. It's just, hey, players, go win your one-on-ones, and I'll try to make this really low percentage pass. And they just run out of them. They just run out of those. But Seattle, they fought back. Geno Smith played a pretty good game. Felt like everybody who used to play for the Jets or the Giants, Julian Love, Leonard Williams, Geno Smith, everybody who used to play in that building in New Jersey all played well against the Jets in this one. So the Jets, Seattle needed that one too to keep pace in that division.
No, they did. And because, Arizona lost, San Francisco are about to go and play in a snowstorm in Buffalo with most of their players missing. So that could be a really important win for Seattle. For the second week in a couple of weeks, that was like Leonard Williams was like a one-man defense. He made the pick six. He had a huge sack in there as well when the Jets were actually driving and looking like maybe they could snatch this back at the end. He had another big play in there as well, knocking a ball down. Like a couple of weeks ago, Leonard Williams had one of these games as well, where it's like that was the best game the man's ever played in the NFL. Well, he's done it twice in relatively short order.
Yeah, those last two games. And look, remember that Seattle, first off, he's on pace for the highest PFF grade of his career. And Seattle gave up a second-round pick for Leonard Williams. Second-round pick and paying him over $20 million a year. He's come good because he has not played. He's been a good, dependable, solid player for his entire career. He's been much closer to elite, especially over these last couple of weeks for Seattle. A couple other interesting developments in the 1 o'clock window. The Colts get the win. They go for 2 for the win, and they get it. 25-24 over the Patriots. Colts are 6-7 heading into their bye, and Patriots fall to 3-10 heading into their bye. I think from a Colts perspective, I thought Drake May outplayed Anthony Richardson during this game, and it was another game where Drake May looked very good, right? And if you're, a New England fan saying, hey, we want to know that we have the QB of the future and also know that, hey, let's get a good draft pick because this roster needs help, that's a win-win there. But the Colts, leaning on Anthony Richardson, converts a fourth and goal accurate pass, and then they run him on the 2-point conversion, just showing his skill set at the end. We called this as a sneaky good game in our preview show.
Yeah, and it was certainly a really good ending. They got down into the tight red zone really quickly, and then the Patriots defense held for like 3 straight plays. Suddenly it's 4th down, and then essentially you're talking about 5 plays down in the tight red zone, the 4 downs, and then the 2-point conversion. The Patriots won 3 of them consecutively. The Colts get the 4th one to score the touchdown, and then deciding, do we go, do we not go? We've just lost 3-1, essentially, in the tight red zone. We decide to go for it anyway, and they convert on the 2-point conversion to win the game. That's a pretty gutsy call, because in this world of, do you trust the math? Do you go for the weight of big numbers? Like getting stuffed essentially 3 consecutive times before you get into the end zone, I would think would make you, in the world of recency bias and what's all the, the information I have to hand about this specific game, I would think that would make you pretty leery about taking the shot to go for 2. Instead, they're like, no, look, we have Anthony Richardson. Theoretically, that guy should be impossible to stop from this kind of range. Let's go for it. Let's get the win.
I like that. Add that because my old example of that was the Dallas Monday night game where Peyton Manning's doing the Manning cast, and Dallas has three of the worst goal to go plays you've ever seen in your life. But then on 4th and goal from the 1, they just run up and go for it. And as Peyton saying, I wouldn't do that. The offense is terrible right now. They have a busted
Yeah.
coverage, wide open touchdown. Previous plays shouldn't have that much effect on the next play. So I appreciate that from Shane Steichen and the Colts, keeping their play. Look, most of the playoff hopes in the AFC are battling essentially with the Broncos for the 7 seed. That's unless other teams collapse, that's what you're going for. And for the Colts, a play like that keeps them alive, and see if they could go on a run after their bye. Wanted to touch on quickly. Texans beat the Jags 23-20. The biggest story in this game, I think, Azeez Al-Shaair with a cheap shot on Trevor Lawrence. I detested this hit on Trevor Lawrence. Lawrence is coming back from injury. He gets knocked out of the game with a concussion. I mean, just clear as day. I think there's suspensions coming. I think this is as bad as it gets. I don't think it was a late slide by Trevor Lawrence. I hate the late slide that induces the hit. I don't think there was any of that. It was just a cheap forearm to the head that knocked Trevor Lawrence out. And then you got, Mac Jones tried to make a comeback for the Jags, but the Texans held on.
Yeah, generally, I think people are too quick to, jump to terms like cheap shot and dirty and all that kind of stuff. But it's hard.
I just jumped right to it.
It's hard not to view this as a deliberate cheap shot. I mean, I don't know if he meant to injure him, but I think he meant to hurt him in a way that you can't get away with anymore. Like this felt like I've got an opportunity now to lay a hit on a guy that came into this game, remember, with a bad shoulder. And it was like, I have a chance to lay a hit on this guy, and maybe it'll be a 15-yard penalty, but it's kind of worth it. Or at least it's close. Maybe I'll get away with it. Like, it felt like a deliberate, conscious, I have a chance to level a hit on this quarterback, and I'm going to take it. And it was bad. I mean, it was really hard hit. Head bounces straight into the turf, immediate fencing response. That's concussion, that's out of the game, and that's Mac Jones for the rest of the way. And not only that, but that's an immediate, bench-clearing brawl. Everybody's rushing to defend their quarterback. That's as bad a hit as has happened in the NFL, actually, for a long time. That's we've gotten very good, actually, at clearing those types of hits. I mean, that used to be every week, right? Joe Montana would take one of those hits every single game because that's the way the game was. We've changed the game so successfully at this point that that's the worst one of those for a long, long time. But Carr's, because that's true, that's such an outlier that should receive a massive suspension. I mean, guys are getting fined after the fact for marginal face mask calls. Derwin James got suspended because he'd been a repeat offender on things that are sort of marginal. That was egregious. I mean, that was a flagrant, egregious hit of the type that's 20, 30 years out of date. He should get a significant suspension for that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we've definitely been conditioned to look for those. I feel like we've been over-conditioned that anytime there's anything close, even clean hits that are just bang, bang, we're like, where's the flag? Where's the flag? But this was the worst one in a while. I thought Kareem Jackson had some bad ones over the last couple of years where he was just vaulting his hell. This was, I think, up there. And again, I hate when quarterbacks induce it. I really hate when they go as, they try to sucker you in along the sideline. It defeats the purpose of trying. Those are the people we're trying to protect as a quarterback, fake slides. And I hate that. But I thought this was a bad shot in this one. Quickly, Washington looked like Washington again, 42-19 over the Titans. Dominant win again. We'll go game by game tomorrow. But the other big game we have to discuss, of course, the Philadelphia Eagles, 10-2 now. 24-19 win over the Ravens, fall to 8-5. I mean, I was so impressed by the Eagles. Most importantly, their defense. They were down 9-0. They cracked down. We talked about on the show. Sometimes Baltimore gets up early and they just, things snowball for the opposing team, right? And in Baltimore, it gets into this mode where it's pick your poison. Who are you going to stop? Lamar, Henry, the pass game. Philadelphia did a really nice job. Saquon Barkley did it again with the long touchdown run to not completely seal it, but pretty much seal it, put the Eagles up 2 scores in the fourth quarter.
It was weird. Other than the fact that the Eagles, for some reason, don't score in the first quarter of games, just ever. Other than that, the game went pretty much as I thought it would, which is they're kind of mirror images of each other, these two teams. Both offenses are incredibly good. They can lean on you. They do their best work in the third and fourth quarter, in the second half. But one defense is better equipped to slow the other one down than the other team is. And that's what happened. Like, as the game wore on, Philadelphia's run game did start to work, and Baltimore's defense just stopped having answers. Meanwhile, Philadelphia's defense was still able to make plays in the second half. You know, Cooper DeJean has a couple of big plays. The defensive line is a problem all the way through the game. Their defense is just better. Like, Philadelphia, you're looking at them and saying they look formidable. They look like a team without many weaknesses or holes. Baltimore, like, that offense can still be really good, but their defense is a problem. It's not Cincinnati level problem, but it's a problem against the best teams in the NFL.
It's interesting because I've actually been a little more impressed by Baltimore's defense the last few weeks. I know they gave up in the fourth quarter on the ground. I think the pass defense has been better. What I'm trying to figure out is Baltimore's offense, though. Are they getting a little front runnery? And look, they were up in this game too, but my criticism of Miami last year was when you face the bad defenses, you beat up on them. Baltimore, they're almost starting to become tough to predict because I don't trust them against Kansas City's defense over, historically. And they've been a little hit or miss. And Lamar's having a historic season, and Henry's having a great season, but in a couple of these big games, they just haven't put it all together. But in games that mean a little bit less, they look completely unstoppable.
They lost Rashad Bateman in this game, which I think is a pretty big part of that passing attack. Like, I think when you take him out of it, now you're back to this receiving core that, like, is very limited and very one-trick pony in a variety of different ways. Like, Zay Flowers is a limited receiver, good receiver, but a limited receiver. Only fits in certain roles. Nelson Aguilar has a very restricted role. You've got the two tight ends, Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely. But, like, Rashad Bateman is the guy that can win at all levels from all different alignments. You take him out of the lineup, it's not the same.
Well, all right, man. We've always got a lot to talk about. We've got 2.5 hours tomorrow morning, probably more. We'll go game by game. It's a full slate, 16 games to discuss. We'll go back to Thanksgiving. But one last thing I want to bring up, because you had we saw everything that happened Thanksgiving, Black Friday. We haven't discussed Matt Eberflus getting fired for the Bears. I think we'll take our time a little bit, as much as we can tomorrow. But do you have any initial thoughts on Eberflus getting fired the day after the Bears put together just really a clinic in bad clock management down the stretch?
Yeah, it was a total and complete breakdown from everybody. Eberflus rightly takes the blame because he's the head coach, but Caleb Williams absolutely screwed that play up as well. It's more Eberflus's fault because ultimately he can fix it. Like, once he sees Caleb Williams has lost the plot, call the timeout, even if that wasn't your initial plan. And I think you can make a case, like most people would say, as soon as that last play finishes, the sack, call the timeout. We can run a play, spike the ball, and then get the kicking team on. I think there's a reasonable case that I want to run a play. I want to have the timeout so that I can run a play to anywhere and then call the timeout and do the same thing, right? Whether or not you agree with that, I think that's a reasonable point to make. So letting the clock run down to a degree is okay, but once you see that the quarterback doesn't know the game plan or that something has happened and he's going off the reservation, like Caleb Williams changed the play at the line. So once you see that's happening, you have to call the timeout. Like that, at that point, you need to go, it's not going right. Quick, the plan's changed. Call the timeout and figure it out from there. He didn't, and like simply being responsible for that level of breakdown is, I think, a fireable offense ultimately. When you add up all of the other things, like they're finding new ways to win or new ways to lose rather on a weekly basis. His overall record in one-score games is like atrocious. If it was a completely clean slate, this would be terrible. But when you factor it in, like he was already a guy vaguely on the hot seat, and then this is like, disqualifying game management process. It's a bad enough screw up that Chicago, a team that's been around since, before the motor car, essentially, fired a coach mid-season for the first time ever, right? So that's how bad they think it is.
Yeah, and look, it was due right? I mean, with it was everything adding up. It wasn't literally just that game. It's not like we're talking about a 10-win team here that was like, oh, you screwed up a game, you're out of here. So yeah, we'll talk more about it tomorrow and probably later this week. The interesting dynamic from a high level to me was that Eberflus was like maybe on the hot seat coming into this year, and they chose to stick with him in a year, right? So he was the carryover coach for the number one overall pick. We've seen that, or a high draft pick. We saw the Bears do that previously with John Fox. We've seen that before with guys like Jeff Fisher, sticking around with Jared Goff. There's a lot of examples of the carryover coach just lasting one more year. So now the Bears presumably have one of the hottest coaching jobs maybe this offseason, because you have the quarterback already. You have a defense that's played tough this year. It's kind of an intriguing situation, other than the fact they're playing in the toughest division maybe in NFL history with the Lions, Vikings, and the Packers right now.
I wonder if they could be the team to tempt Ben Johnson into a head coaching job. Remember, for 2 years now, he's essentially said, no, I would prefer to stay with Detroit and, continue as offense coordinator because I don't think the jobs that I'm being offered are good enough. Well, this theoretically is a great situation. It's just in the division. You would have to face your old team twice. Is that a problem for him, or is that great?
I think it's going to be intriguing for a lot of people going to Chicago. So again, we'll have much more on that tomorrow morning. Check the mic live, 7 a.m. Eastern. We go game by game, all 16 games, all the way from Thanksgiving through today. Of course, we got Sunday Night Football, 49ers, Bills still to come. So thanks to everybody for tuning in. We'll see you again tomorrow morning. Check the mic.